I arrived in Chicago late in the evening, worn out from the flight but relieved to finally check in. I'd booked a small Airbnb studio in Logan Square, a quiet, artsy neighborhood that looked safe and well-connected. The place was on the third floor of an old brownstone, listed as a modern minimalist studio with a skyline view. The lockbox was easy to find, just outside the gate. I punched in the code, grabbed the key, and headed upstairs. Inside, the apartment was spotless, like uncomfortably clean. It smelled strongly of disinfectant, the kind that stings a little in your nose. Everything looked staged. The books on the shelf hadn't been touched, and the bed was made too perfectly. Still, it was late, and I just wanted to rest. I dropped my bag, grabbed a drink from the fridge, and told myself, 3 nights, just get through it. That first night, I was lying in bed around midnight scrolling on my phone when I heard faint footsteps coming from the apartment above. Slow, steady, like someone pacing. At first, I didn't think much of it. Probably just another tenant, I figured. But then I remembered. The listing said the top floor was vacant. Maybe the host lived up there? I wasn't sure, but I tried not to overthink it. Before brushing my teeth, I noticed the bathroom mirror cabinet was slightly open. I could have sworn I'd closed it earlier. I shut it again and moved on. Later, when I went back in to grab some water, it was open again. Just a crack. I stared at it for a second, uneasy, but told myself it was probably bad hinges or maybe the airflow from the vent. Still, I made sure to push it shut firmly this time before heading back to bed. The next morning, everything felt normal until I noticed my toothbrush was slightly out of place, angled differently than I'd left it. I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was being paranoid. That night, things got weirder. I was half asleep when I heard a soft, dragging sound above me. Not footsteps this time, something heavier, like furniture being slowly moved. I sat up and listened. It went on for maybe a minute, then stopped. I pulled out my phone and started recording, hoping to catch it if it happened again, but as soon as I hit record, the apartment went dead silent. I texted the host, casually asking if anyone was staying upstairs. No response. Before heading to bed, I noticed the closet door was slightly open. I clearly remembered closing it earlier. I shut it again, firmly this time, telling myself I was just tired and maybe a little jumpy. On the third night, I woke up shivering. The thermostat said 72 Fahrenheit, but it felt closer to 60, the kind of cold that sinks into your skin. I got up to check the vents, and as I walked past the hallway, noticed a dim light leaking from the closet. I never turned that light on. I never even opened that closet. I hesitated, then slowly pulled the door open. Nothing inside. Just coats, boxes, and a strong sour smell, like sweat soaked into old fabric. I closed it quickly, stomach tight with unease. Later, while digging through a kitchen drawer looking for tea, I found a small brass key labeled B2. There had been no mention of a basement in the listing. That's when it hit me. What if someone still had access? Maybe an old tenant? Or worse, the host? Slipping in when I was asleep. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been in the apartment. Before bed, I wedged a chair under the front doorknob. Not foolproof, but it made me feel a little safer. I also set my phone to record audio, just in case. I barely slept. In the morning, the chair was exactly where I left it, unmoved. I started to relax. Maybe I was overthinking everything after all. Then I played back the recording. At 3:12, the audio picked up faint floor creaking, like weight shifting slowly. Then a soft click, metal against metal, almost like a lock turning. And then, clear as day, a long, deep exhale right near the mic. I froze. That wasn't the building settling. Someone had been inside. I didn't bother packing properly. I just grabbed my bag and left. When I tried to contact the host, their profile was gone. Not deactivated, no longer available. The listing? Completely wiped, like none of it ever existed. I reported everything to Airbnb support. The noises, the recording, the missing host profile. All I got back was a generic email thanking me for my feedback. Nothing else. 2 weeks later, still unsettled, I checked the app out of curiosity. The listing was back online. Same photos, same layout, but under a different name and host picture. I scrolled down to the reviews, heart pounding. The most recent one stopped me cold. Beautiful place, but I swear someone came in while I was sleeping. Won't stay again. I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't just me. I stayed at an Airbnb alone in the mountains near Asheville, North Carolina last fall. It was one of those rustic cabins. Wooden beams, stone fireplace, big windows overlooking the forest. Exactly what I needed. I'd been burned out from work, needed a break to clear my head, maybe get some writing done. No distractions, just peace and quiet. The listing had perfect reviews. Everyone said it was cozy, private, relaxing, and it was. At first. I got there just before sunset. The air was crisp, the place was clean, and the host left a welcome note with a little basket of snacks. I remember thinking, this is going to be perfect. But something shifted that night. Little things, barely noticeable at first. By the second night, I was sleeping with the lights on, fully dressed, wide awake, listening to every sound in that house. I still think about it. It still messes with me. The cabin sat at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by tall pines and absolute silence. Inside, it was exactly like the photos. Warm lighting, clean kitchen, a soft leather couch facing the fireplace. There was even a small writing desk near a window that looked out over the woods. It felt lived in, but not in a bad way. Comfortable. As I was unpacking, I noticed one door at the end of the hallway was shut tight with a key lock. I texted the host, just out of curiosity. They replied right away. "Oh, that's just the utility room. Furnace and cleaning supplies. Nothing important. Please don't worry about it." I didn't. Not at first. A lot of Airbnbs have locked closets for the owner's stuff. Still, something about how solid the door looked. Thicker than the others, scuffed around the handle, made me pause for a second longer than I should have. That first night, the house felt normal enough. I made dinner, watched a bit of TV, and got into bed around 11. It was quiet, almost too quiet. Out there, in the middle of the woods, there's no distant traffic, no hum of neighbors, just creaks and occasional gusts of wind brushing the windows. Around 1 a.m., I was half asleep when I heard a soft thump, like something dropping onto the floor. Not loud, but distinct. I sat up instantly, heart already racing. It hadn't come from outside. It sounded like it came from the living room, or maybe the kitchen. I got up and walked through the cabin, phone flashlight in hand. Checked every room. Nothing looked out of place. No broken glass, no open windows. I convinced myself maybe something had slid off the counter, or maybe the fridge made a noise. It's an old house, after all. I went back to bed. The next morning, I went for a hike on one of the nearby trails. It was cold, but clear. Exactly the kind of morning I'd come for. When I got back to the cabin around noon, I noticed something small but strange. One of the upper kitchen cabinets was slightly open. I hadn't used it. I was pretty sure I hadn't even touched it. Still, I chalked it up to memory. Maybe I'd opened it without thinking, maybe it didn't latch properly. That night, I climbed into bed early with a book. Around midnight, I started hearing a faint rustling. Soft, almost like fabric shifting. I froze, straining to hear. It was coming from somewhere near the hallway. I turned off the light, figuring maybe it was wind or a squirrel on the roof. But then I heard it again, a slow creak, like someone stepping on wood. I barely slept. Every sound felt intentional. I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone. The next morning, the bathroom door was cracked open. I clearly remembered shutting it the night before, out of habit more than anything. I stood there for a second, just staring at it, trying to come up with a reason. Later, while brushing my teeth, I picked up my toothbrush and realized it was damp. I hadn't touched it since that morning. Something was wrong. I went around the cabin, checking every window, every door, making sure they were locked. I even wedged a chair under the front doorknob. That night, the wind picked up. Tree branches scraped against the roof. I was just starting to doze off when I heard the locked door at the end of the hallway rattled. Not loud, just a subtle shake, like something was pressing gently against it. I sat up in bed, barely breathing. For a while there was nothing. Then, a knock. Soft, from inside the wall. I didn't wait around the next morning. I packed my bag in the dark, barely looked around the cabin, and drove off just before sunrise. I didn't message the host about anything that happened. I just sent a short, "Thanks for the stay," and left it at that. Back home a few days later, I told a friend about the experience, half laughing, half serious. I expected them to brush it off. Instead, they got quiet and pulled up the house on Google Maps Street View. The image was older, overgrown yard, different paint on the door, but on the side of the house, facing away from the driveway, there was a second window I hadn't noticed during my stay. It wasn't visible in the Airbnb listing photos. It lined up exactly with the locked room. My friend stared at the screen for a moment, then said, "Someone could have been in there the whole time." I still think about that room. The scuffed door, the soft creaks at night, the knock from inside the wall. If it was just a utility closet, like the host said, why did it feel like someone was living in there? Why was that window hidden from the listing? Sometimes, late at night, I'll wake up thinking I heard the same soft knock. 3 slow taps, like before. I haven't booked a remote Airbnb since. And I always ask now, are all the rooms unlocked? I'm a 28-year-old software engineer from Austin, Texas. And a few weeks ago, I got invited to a job interview with a tech startup in Denver. It felt like the kind of opportunity I couldn't pass up. So I booked a flight and decided to arrive a couple of days early to prep and get a feel for the city. I found a cozy little Airbnb in Capitol Hill, a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and historic homes. The listing looked great, clean, modern, with lots of natural light and a fully stocked kitchen. The reviews were solid too. Everyone said it was peaceful and well kept. The host, Rachel, messaged me quickly with the check-in instructions. The key was under the mat. I got there just after sunset, a little worn out from the trip, and let myself in. The place was just like the photos. Quiet. Still, almost too quiet. The place felt lived in, but tidy. Clean counters, neatly folded towels, and a faint lavender scent hanging in the air. Rachel, the host, texted to check if I got in okay. She mentioned she lived a few hours away but could be reached anytime. I unpacked a little, made some tea, and sat on the couch to go over my interview prep. That's when I noticed it. A picture frame on the shelf near the TV, slightly tilted to the right. I strained it without thinking, just one of those little things you fix automatically. That night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard faint creaking from the living room. Not footsteps, just the kind of sound old houses make. I told myself it was nothing. In the morning, while making coffee, I glanced at the shelf again. The picture frame was tilted. Same angle, same direction. I knew I had fixed it. The next day was all about interview prep. Notes, practice questions, ironing clothes. By afternoon, I packed up my laptop and headed to a nearby coffee shop to focus. I didn't get back to the Airbnb until after 8 p.m., a little tired but feeling ready. As I walked into the kitchen to grab some water, I noticed one of the upper cabinets was slightly ajar. Odd, I always closed them, and the glass I'd left by the sink was now sitting in the middle of the counter. I figured maybe I'd just been rushing earlier and didn't pay attention. I got ready for bed, trying to shake the weird feeling settling in my gut. Around 2 a.m., I was jolted awake by a faint clink. Glass. I got up, heart thudding, and walked into the kitchen. The glass was now on the floor, upright, unbroken, and at least 4 feet from where I left it. I woke up groggy and unsettled, the image of that glass on the floor still sharp in my mind. I tried to shake it off. This interview was too important. After a quick breakfast, I put on my suit, grabbed my notes, and left for the startup's office downtown. The interview went well, I think, but the whole time I felt off, like I'd left something unresolved back at the Airbnb. I got home around 6 p.m., half expecting more weirdness, but everything looked normal until I walked into the bedroom. The closet door, definitely shut when I left, was wide open. On the bed was a small pile of clothes, neatly folded, not mine. A faded flannel shirt, some jeans, and a pair of socks I'd never seen before. My chest tightened. I checked the Airbnb's security camera feed through the app. Front door untouched since morning. No one had come in, not even me. Not according to the footage. I tried to stay calm. Told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe the host had left some old clothes behind and forgot. Still, I couldn't shake the crawling feeling in my spine. I packed most of my things, deciding I'd check out first thing in the morning. One more night. That's all I had to get through. Around 3 a.m., a loud thud from the bathroom jolted me upright. Heart pounding, I got up and slowly opened the door. Every toiletry I had, my toothbrush, deodorant, even the travel-size shampoo, was lined up in a perfect row across the sink. I never do that. I toss everything in a pouch. Every drawer was open, then I noticed the chair from the kitchen. It was now in the bedroom, facing the bed, like someone or something had been watching me sleep. I didn't go back to sleep. I just waited for daylight. At 5 a.m., I grabbed my bags and left without looking back. I didn't message the host. I didn't leave a thank you. I just needed to get out. I caught an early flight home and tried to move on. Told myself I was just stressed, sleep-deprived, imagining things. But deep down, I knew what I saw was real. The feeling in that house wasn't just in my head. A few days later, I logged into Airbnb to leave a review, to warn someone, anyone, but the listing was marked temporarily unavailable. Weird. Weeks passed. One night, unable to sleep, I checked again. The listing was back. Same photos, same layout, same host name. But the review section was gone, disabled, completely blank. It was like nothing had ever happened. But I remember every sound, every shift, every inch of that chair. I didn't imagine it, and someone else is going to book that place next.